with either Archie or Lily, and it needs to happen. They need to prove that those children, Meghan and Harry, are not entitled to privacy in this matter, and their privacy is trumped by our right to know that no bastard is going to sit on the throne of this country. All Harry and Meghan need to do is prove to us that she popped those babies out. And that's all they need to do. And if they don't, it is unfair on the children. It's also unfair on the royal family.
As we've seen Meghan Markle put out more and more content connected to her children, whether that's the pregnancy video that made the entire world cringe from secondhand embarrassment.
I looked up, her mouth set in a particular way. Things were getting serious. I said to Meg, my love, you need a push.
Did Meghan Markle use a surrogate? That's been something posited literally for well over 3 years when it comes to her firstborn son Archie and even her daughter Lilibet. And many people even wonder, are their children even real?
Did Buckingham Palace or Prince William set a trap for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and were they gullible enough to fall into?
This is absolutely insane that they thought they could get away with it, especially Meghan Markle and Harry. The con of the century, 2 cons of the century in the form of 2 royal children included in the line of succession.
All description she does of the Portland hospital, the birth, that was completely fabricated. We all know, the first interview, we all know that she never intended to go to the Portland hospital. She intended to have the baby at home.
That Meghan put on her Instagram feed earlier this week with Archie in the garden. What did you see?
But I had to take my children to Professor Balstrup, who was the leading expert in the field at that time, at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital it was, and he was going to be investigating. And of course, you know my boys, so you know they're very spirited. That she has that child in a vice-like grip. And it's, you know, if they were a husband and wife team, there are laws now about coercive control.
An unprecedented development is unfolding within the walls of Buckingham Palace. This isn't speculation, this isn't media gossip, this is something more deliberate, more calculated, and significantly more grave. Based on information from palace sources, high-ranking officials have initiated what they're describing as a formal documentation assessment regarding Archie and Lily. And for the royal establishment, taking this kind of action is nearly incomprehensible. The institution despises ambiguity. It dreads any uncertainty surrounding hereditary legitimacy more than it dreads public controversy. Privileges can be revoked, responsibilities can be stripped, but doubts about royal descent.
Everything she's done has only drawn more speculation and brought the controversies back up about how Meghan and Harry have handled all of this, as well as the rumors that perhaps they used a surrogate for one or both of the children.
Those create anxiety throughout the entire system. Because if there's one principle the monarchy has upheld for generations, it's this. The succession hierarchy must be absolutely certain. So what changed? Why address the one subject the palace typically acts as though it doesn't exist? Reports indicate a collection of discrepancies eventually reached a threshold where they could no longer be overlooked. Not glaring errors, nuanced ones, absent information, unconventional documentation, and protocols that deviated from established royal norms. Minor elements that individually appear insignificant, but when assembled together form a concerning picture.
Where are the children? Where are Harry and Meghan's kids? And do they honestly exist? Now, I know that that's kind of like a little bit conspiratorial, but you know what? I'm down the rabbit hole now since I've accepted the moon bump story. And if the moon bump story was true and she didn't actually have these pregnancies, then is it possible that she has faked having the kids?
And when that picture landed before top officials, the palace discreetly started investigating. Their initial focus, the very first formal document tied to the Sussex children, Archie's birth certificate. For typical families, a birth certificate is routine documentation. For the royal family, it's a legal cornerstone, the primary official evidence of identity for someone who could eventually stand near the succession hierarchy. Every detail on that document is expected to be precise, stable, and unchanging. But Archie's birth certificate didn't remain that way. Several months following his birth, something was quietly altered. Meghan's complete legal identity, Rachel Meghan Markle, was deleted.
California Birth Index, and per the website at thecaliforniabirthindex.org, the California Birth Index, or CABI, is a database that stores records of births in California, abstracts of birth certificates. Putting her full official name of Rachel Meghan Markle, you can see that the official records show.
Replacing it was solely the designation Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. No given name, no family name, simply the Crown-sanctioned title. In royal administration, that type of modification isn't merely uncommon, it's virtually unprecedented. Someone must submit the request for amendment. Someone must authorize it. Someone must document it. And there must be a justification substantial enough to warrant modifying a prospective royal's fundamental record. Yet, when investigators examined that particular moment, something appeared inconsistent. The accounts didn't align. Meghan stated the palace demanded the change. Palace sources maintained Meghan's team initiated it. There was no consistent narrative, and critically, no transparent documentation explaining why the modification was necessary.
Even though Meghan had let it be known she wanted a home birth, it was probably very realistic that her first child at 37, it was going to be born in hospital.
So at the time, Archie Mountbatten Windsor was born May 6, 2019.
And for the palace, ambiguity is more threatening than scandal. If the certificate was modified once, why was it modified in the first place? And what other elements in Archie's early documentation didn't align? Those concerns drove the review further, directly into the circumstances of his birth. Once palace officials retrieved Archie's certificate, they started reconstructing everything related to his arrival. And that's when the additional wave of inconsistencies emerged. Not obvious errors, not controversies, simply minor elements that didn't conform to the royal formula. Elements the monarchy typically manages with absolute exactness. First, there was the public announcement.
Meghan and Harry did instead was they did not announce it when Meghan went into labor, for whatever reason. They kept Archie's birth private for over 8 hours. They did not tell people that he was actually born and arrived until 8 hours later. They also issued a confusing press release suggesting Meghan had just gone into labor after Archie had already been born. So they were playing games here with this. And the result was that the media and the public felt misled because they were misled.
Every royal infant for generations has adhered to the same protocol. Confirmed delivery, formal medical documentation, palace statement, and subsequently a managed photographic presentation. But with Archie, the sequence seemed inverted. The public discovered he was born before any conventional verification surfaced. Multiple hours elapsed before information was made clear, and even afterward, it remained imprecise. No hospital entrance presentation, no authenticated witness documentation, simply a compact appearance several days afterward that appeared orchestrated, not traditional.
They decide, okay, well, we have to come out and show the baby in some way, but we're not coming out to the street. The filthy masses are not going to have anything to do with our kid. So then they show up, and there's Meghan in her white dress with Harry, and he's holding this completely still baby.
Then emerged the venue ambiguity. Early accounts referenced one medical facility. Subsequent communications suggested a different one. And privately, personnel allegedly encountered difficulty reconciling the sequence with established royal protocols. Royal deliveries typically involve certified midwives, medical professionals, and senior representatives who validate and authenticate critical moments. Everything is recorded because it must be. But when palace investigators examined Archie's sequence, they discovered omissions. Not sufficient to allege misconduct, but sufficient to challenge whether the procedure adhered to royal expectations.
That it just really kind of boggles the mind. I mean, just for titles, for example. So when Archie was first born, they said they didn't want him to have a title. He was going to be a private citizen. I was like, bravo, you understand. He's not going to be a working member of the royal family. He is going to have to live a normal life, get a normal job. That is fantastic. And then it came out later in the Oprah Winfrey interview. Well, they denied him a title and security because he is a mixed race child. And then it was kind of like, and then later she kind of backtracked. And
if Archie's documentation seemed ambiguous, Lilibet's was something completely different. Archie's unconventional records prompted questions. But Lilibet's arrival generated a degree of confusion the palace had never confronted previously. Her existence was disclosed exclusively through Meghan and Harry's representatives in California. No British medical professionals, no royal healthcare personnel, no palace notification, no customary display board outside Buckingham Palace, not even a validating announcement from the royal establishment. Instead, the public was given a refined media statement and a selection of meticulously chosen photographs. For any other public figure, that would be standard. For a child connected to the royal lineage, it's a departure from centuries of established practice.
Meghan just went into labor when really Archie had been born for several hours at that point is a foolish game to play. And it only diminished credibility and trust, and it honestly made people kind of mad and irritated about the situation because it's like, well, why would you do that? Why are you lying to people? Why are you trying to mislead people?
Royal arrivals are traditionally authenticated by medical specialists endorsed by the Crown. Documentation is submitted instantly. Observers are registered. The facility is verified. But with Lilibet, none of those recognizable foundations were apparent. And as investigators pieced together the chronology, the discrepancies increased. Even Meghan's pregnancy appearances documented through video conferences and photographer images didn't establish a coherent narrative. Certain photographs suggested she was more advanced in pregnancy, others suggested otherwise. Independently, these observations would signify nothing. Paired with the absence of royal verification, they contributed to the palace's apprehension, and the quietness from Buckingham Palace made everything seem more peculiar. They neither validated nor challenged anything. They simply observed. But the most significant warning sign wasn't the arrival. It was what followed. The occasion that should have connected Lilibet to the monarchy permanently, her baptism. Before the palace could even examine the baptism matter, advisors had to reconsider something far more fundamental.
Harry and Meghan they would refuse to kind of show him. They finally kind of showed him off in South Africa, and it was very much, kind of a display, and she went to the polo match, and again, people wondered because it's like, she just it was a very stiff way she was holding him. It was just looked odd, and you looked at her and compared her to Kate, and you can't help the comparisons. And Kate is playing with baby Louis, and he's, kissing her, trying on sunglasses, and Meghan does not even look at Louis at all, and Louis looking at her.
The regulations that establish who is and who is not formally acknowledged as a royal child. This is where the 1917 letters patent became part of the discussion. A technical historical document that abruptly held tremendous significance. Drafted under King George V, it specifies precisely which descendants of the sovereign qualify for royal designations and acknowledgement. But concealed within that antiquated wording is a far more critical concept. Royal standing is not merely ceremonial. It must be confirmable. To be acknowledged under the crown, a child must satisfy multiple requirements. 1. An ancestry the monarchy can completely verify. 2. An arrival that adheres to recognized royal protocol. 3. Rituals and validations performed under the Church of England. These aren't discretionary customs. They're constitutional protections, regulations created to avoid confusion, challenges, or assertions against the throne. Most of the time, these procedures are straightforward to execute.
So Sussex, no longer HRH, was safely delivered of a son, and she and her child are both doing well. So back to the tradition of putting out a framed bulletin or a gilded easel outside Buckingham Palace after royal births has been going on since 1837, so it's a cool tradition. And George, Charlotte, and Louis' easels listed the doctors' names with signatures, birth weight, and time, and referenced the royal family. But Archie's, notably, only included mention of the Queen and the royal family in the wording, but not on the actual document, and then they omitted the signatures from the doctor's presence, unlike previous notices.
Royal arrivals occur in the UK under oversight with observers, documentation, and prompt registration. But with Archie and Lilibet, too much occurred beyond that framework: an overseas birth, no royal medical observers, unconfirmed chronologies, conflicting documentation. Which leads us to the ritual that should have resolved all uncertainties, but instead generated the most substantial one of all, the baptism that wasn't documented. A baptism may appear like a tender family occasion. Candles, sponsors, photographs, prayers, but within the monarchy, it's far more than that. It's a constitutional procedure. It officially connects a royal child to the Church of England, the institution woven together with the crown itself. It establishes the initial formal spiritual and historical documentation of the child's identity.
And then the next holiday card we see, I believe it was the famous Lilibet's born, and here's little Archie. And that little kid who's Archie doesn't look anything like the little kid we've seen in the Harry and Meghan documentary on Netflix that we saw. I don't know who that kid was in the picture, or even Lilibet doesn't look like the picture that they've shown of her. Those kids didn't look the same.
That's why Meghan's statement about Lilibet's baptism in California triggered instant concerns within royal circles. If the ritual was valid under Church of England jurisdiction, there would be a definite traceable documentation, a certificate, a registry notation, a validation from a bishop. Even confidential rituals create documentation trails. But when advisors discreetly examined the church's archives, nothing corresponding to Lilibet's identity surfaced. No notation, no authorization, no acknowledgement from the Archbishop's administration, not even a confidential confirmation. For any child, that would be peculiar. For a child potentially connected to the royal succession, it's a constitutional emergency. Royal baptisms are intended to be observed, validated, archived. They're designed to eliminate all uncertainty about the child's position in church and state. But the palace discovered nothing to verify that Lilibet had been officially received into the very faith that characterizes the monarchy. Without that documentation, her royal association isn't just questionable, it's unfinished. And that absent element pushed Buckingham Palace into its next action, compiling a complete internal investigation file.
Meghan Markle gave birth to Lily because this is what's called plausible deniability. They want to be able to say, hey, we never claimed that she was our daughter in that announcement. They're legally covering their backs. There's just too many unknowns. And then, of course, we have that the doctor that allegedly delivered Lily quit her practice 2 weeks after giving birth to Lily or delivering Lily. That sentence there is missing. That is a vital sentence that Meghan Markle chose not to put in an official statement because she knows she would get into a lot of legal trouble and she needed plausible deniability.
Once the baptism matter reached the agenda, Buckingham Palace transitioned from detached monitoring to a structured, systematic review, not a public inquiry, not a controversy, a discreet internal investigation file, the kind the monarchy employs when something doesn't correspond with royal precedent. Senior advisors, archivists, constitutional attorneys, and ecclesiastical liaisons were brought in. Their assignment wasn't to charge anyone with impropriety. It wasn't driven by emotion. It wasn't targeted personally. It was straightforward. Recreate every phase of Archie and Lilibet's arrivals and measure them against royal benchmarks. They constructed a chronological framework. Arrivals, disclosures, declarations, rituals, records, and every public and confidential element accessible to the crown.
Just made the whole thing seem more bizarre. Meghan later claimed in interviews across Netflix and Oprah that Archie was denied a prince title due to institutional decisions, possibly rooted in race. Buckingham Palace's position was that Archie wasn't entitled to a title under current royal protocols, which reserve prince status for grandchildren of the monarch, not great-grandchildren, except for heirs in the direct line.
And as they populated the timeline, additional irregularities emerged. Absent observers, absent hospital validations, uncertainty regarding medical staff, postponed documentation, contradictory narratives from Meghan, Harry, and their representatives, rituals with no confirmable documentation, arrivals beyond royal oversight, authorizations that didn't align with standard royal protocol. Separately, none of this was dramatic. Combined, it created a dilemma the Crown could not dismiss. Because for the monarchy, ambiguity is more threatening than condemnation. A contested chronology generates uncertainty. Uncertainty undermines credibility. And credibility is the monarchy's cornerstone. With the documentation expanding continuously, one question became inescapable. What does this mean for Meghan and Harry? Now, within Montecito, the atmosphere is nothing like the curated content on social media. Because Meghan and Harry understand precisely what a royal examination signifies, and it's far more severe than public condemnation or negative press coverage. For Meghan, the threat isn't merely personal, it's reputation annihilating. Her complete post-royal persona has been constructed around being a contemporary duchess, a parent of royal children, someone who departed from the palace but still maintained its allure. That allure is what fueled the Netflix productions, the publishing agreements, the conversations, the endorsements on lifestyle merchandise, the American Riviera orchard persona she attempts to cultivate.
Or talking about her experiences on podcasts or things like that, or just posting a lot more pictures. It has drawn a lot of attention to the controversies surrounding her kids, her pregnancies, how the children came into the world, the whole thing. Everything she's done has only drawn more speculation and brought the controversies back up.
But a royal parent without royal offspring, a duchess with no confirmable royal heritage through her family, that transforms everything. For Harry, the consequences penetrate more profoundly. This isn't about commerce. It's about core identity. Harry was raised being informed his heritage mattered, that his children would inherently be part of the monarchy's trajectory. He assumed that even if he departed, his kids would still connect to something greater. But now he's witnessing that prospect diminish. He allegedly attempted contacting senior royals frustrated, distressed, even begging. But the palace has become detached. When the crown enters into constitutional territory, sentiment no longer influences decisions. The examination is proceeding and nothing Meghan or Harry expresses can prevent it. Which leads to the ultimate question. What will the crown do next? Now that Buckingham Palace has discreetly compiled its documentation, the concluding phase is the one Meghan and Harry dread most. The phase where the monarchy determines how to proceed. And the crown always selects the approach that safeguards the institution, not individuals. There are 3 potential conclusions, and each one would transform everything surrounding Archie and Lilibet.
People wouldn't, for the rest of maybe Archie and Lily's life, they may deal with questions about this surrogacy. And the only people they have to blame are their own parents, who have fueled these rumors.
Option 1, designations suspended. The palace could simply cease updating or extending the children's designations. No eliminations, no statements, just a silent suspension. They would remain referenced, but with no future acknowledgement, no ceremonial participation, and no active royal standing, a gradual disappearance. Option 2, silent redesignation. Without creating attention, the palace could redesignate the children as private citizens. No controversy, no media statements. Their identities quietly shift down official platforms, regarded as descendants existing outside royal framework. Option 3, official elimination. The most uncommon, most calculated action and the one the internal examination makes feasible. If documentation cannot authenticate birth protocol or heritage standards, The Crown can constitutionally eliminate designations and acknowledgement completely. No hostility, no sentiment, just the monarchy safeguarding its succession. And that's the actual message behind this examination. The Crown always endures. People don't. Meghan and Harry constructed an enterprise on royal mystique, but the palace controls the authority, and one decision can erase everything. Before this narrative takes its next direction, hit like so more people see the truth. Subscribe for every new royal development, and drop a comment below. Do you think the palace should reveal everything publicly? Stay tuned. This saga is only getting started.